I spent 96 hours creating a game for the GMTK Game Jam. It didn't go well. Now if you don't know what a game jam is, it's a short period of time where developers make a game around a given theme. The theme this time was Countdown. In previous years I would go through all of my games and try and flip those ideas on their head. But this year I had an idea straight away, and they always tell you not to go with your first idea. But this year I broke that rule. So I just got back from vacation, absolutely knackered, and the GMTK Game Jam theme is out, so gonna try and do it, but the first day is probably not going to be very productive. The theme is Countdown, and I have a bit of an idea of what I might do. Got an idea around elevators. It is my first idea, and they say don't go for your first idea. But this year I might do that, because I think it could be kind of cool. So my original idea was to have an elevator that descends floors and will drop you off at each one. There would be 100 floors to survive, and you would use each floor to try and prepare for the final floor, which would either be a boss or an escape sequence. On each floor, the player must survive as long as they can before they have to descend. I thought it'd be fun to have a tether that can pull you back to the elevator. This would give you more time to explore because you wouldn't have to worry about backtracking time as much. I also thought that maybe this tether could be a literal lifeline. So maybe you'd have this radial menu pop up and you choose what resource the tether will give you over time. So for example, maybe you could select a healing tether, the tether would go red, and then every 10 seconds you get half a heart. Or maybe you could select ammo, and then every 10 seconds you get 10 ammo. Development started out with some very different character designs. I'll be honest, I had no story ideas for why you would be descending this elevator. And I always default to zombies, so I created this player character that looks like a zombie survivor. And also me. Just a wee bit. First of all, I got some basic firing set up. I started having this issue when the player would flip sides when aiming, so if you aim to the left of the screen, it flips to the left, if you aim to the right of the screen, it flips to the right. And when I was doing this, I had a couple bugs. For example, sometimes the gun would go upside down, which isn't ideal. Eventually I got it working, and I also drew some art for the zombies to add in later. Then I spent a lot of time on the tether mechanic. I pictured that it would wrap around objects and the environment, and then when you pull back, it would follow that trail. But it wasn't really working how I expected. I sunk loads of hours into this and I barely had anything to show for it. After wasting all that time in a mechanic that wasn't necessary to finish the game, I was feeling pretty down on myself. We only have a series of WhatsApp messages for how I was feeling during the jam. I just had a moving triangle after the first night. Ideas keep getting better, but I'm struggling with the implementation. I should try, so much to do. Oh god, I need to make progress. It's so warm. Yeah, there was a UK heatwave. It's still stupidly hot when I'm recording this. Splatoon. Yeah, Splatoon Raiders came out on the second day of the game jam. Whoops. Procrastinated. Might quit. It seems too far off. Yeah, so behind the scenes I was feeling pretty defeatist and I was thinking that I might not submit. However, suddenly we jumped forward in development and who the hell is that? Yeah, so I really wasn't feeling the theming of my game. Zombies again. It just felt off. When this normally happens, I would have scrapped my entire game and give up, just like I did in GMTK 2025. But I took a risk and spent some time redrawing the player sprite to be this guy in a hazmat suit to fit a sci-fi theme. I drew this front view of a mask which I couldn't use in the game because it's a side scroller, not a fucking front of the face scroller. We now also have some rough level art, a bat that can knock enemies backwards, and I finally solved the tether problem by giving up on that functionality for the tether. Instead of a dynamic tether that will just wrap around obstacles, I decided that I would just place nodes throughout the level that the tether would hook onto, and when you go the opposite way, the tether unhooks from those objects. Because of these nodes that I was using to hook the tether to, you could get lines that would intersect the map, which obviously isn't ideal because then you'll just tether into the wall constantly. So I decided to disable all player collisions when you're tethering back. Here you'll notice I added this weird purple chicken leg. This wasn't for setting up intergalactic KFC, but instead it was an idea of currency. I wanted to reward the player for getting kills or killing enemies with their body when they come back with the tether. Something I was calling tether kills. Very creative. I wanted to reward this risky play of not killing all the enemies instantly and saving some enemies to tether kill. I'm not saying unalive, okay? It's dumb. I added a cap to the bullets that you have as a way of balancing the game. Currently, all guns will share the same bullet pool. Speaking of guns, I added an assault rifle. Currently, you can only have one gun, so it's a bit of a no-brainer to take the assault rifle over the pistol. I added a health system and a quick game over screen. And by game over screen, I mean if you die, your character gets deleted and the game crashes. We also have some chicken alien bits on the UI. That definitely won't get cut. Along with the first alien enemy, the drone. We now have hives that can be destroyed. The balls. The balls. The balls. The balls are tethered to surfaces with these weird stalks. They will physically react to enemies, players, and bullets. The darker ones are random spawn spots. So for each floor you can actually get additional hives that you need to defeat and additional enemies that you need to defeat based on random generation. I added the same randomization to ammo boxes, health boxes, and weapon spawns. In this system you'll set a rarity, so you might select ammo box, rare, health, epic, and that's how it determines what percentages to use for spawn rates. The way weapon rarity works is a little bit different to how games normally handle it. Instead of just being able to spawn a uncommon, rare, or legendary at any time, it instead looks at the rarity of the same gun in your inventory. So let's say you have a common assault rifle. The next time an assault rifle spawns, it will be uncommon. Let's say you have an uncommon assault rifle in your inventory. The next time one spawns, it will be rare. We've also finally added the Game Jam theme by giving you a countdown to destroy the hives and also the same countdown as part of getting back to the elevator. With this new system, we've made the tether pretty much essential. Some levels can be really tight on timings, and the tether will get you back quicker than if you walked. And also, the tether is essential because being inside the lift does not save you from the timer. You have to tether back or you will lose. We should probably talk about how this elevator works. First of all, the lift doesn't actually move. My experience with moving platforms has always been chaotic, and I really didn't want to add those physics problems into my core game loop. So instead, whilst you're locked in the elevator by these doors that come down, the levels that spawn in will move to you. Levels are randomly selected from a list. Each level that spawns in has its own timer, so I can have some longer levels than others. I added another enemy, the Brute. This guy reuses the logic that I'd set aside for the zombie. He's very fast and aggressive, so it's important that you take him out. Alternatively, you could try and get around him. We should talk about the limits to level design. As it stands, we can't really have areas above or below the elevator, because then we would get in the way of them when they're spawning in and moving towards us. That means that we can't have areas that connect from one side to the other, which does severely limit us. We also need to be mindful that we can't do too much with the tether. If we have an area where we drop and intend to use the tether to come back, there can't be any hives before that drop, because we can only tether when we've destroyed all the hives. Gun rarities now had coloured outlines when you were overlapping them. White is common, green is uncommon, blue is rare, purple is epic, and yellow is legendary. For each level of gun rarity, our gun's fire rate goes up, and that can lead to some pretty crazy guns. I decided then to add separate ammunition for the pistol and primary weapons. Like I said earlier, why would you use an assault rifle over a pistol? And the way that I solved that was to give you unlimited ammo for your pistol, and then have your primary weapons use limited ammo. Which means you can now hold two guns. You can have a primary and a secondary, and you can swap between them. I also made the game darker. I realized that for a kind of spooky sci-fi game, it wasn't very dark. And the reason it wasn't is because I forgot to take out the global light in the level. That's because I built my entire game in the sample scene in Unity. Darn. When I turned off this global light, the whole game felt completely different. It makes the lift look pretty nice, and it makes descending into the darkness feel just really moody and cool. There was a slight problem though. Any object that could flash so anything that takes damage basically, hives, enemies, the player, all of those weren't being affected by the lighting. This was to do with how I was instancing. To do with how I was instancing. This was to do with how I was handling materials. When the enemy, for example, takes damage, it swaps to a material that is flashing. When they're no longer taking damage, they swap back to a regular material. And the problem I had was that I needed these to be copies of materials, or else when one enemy takes damage, every enemy takes damage and flashes. And we don't want everyone flashing, because that's kind of gross. So, these materials that I instanced, one was the flashing material, one was the default lit material, and for some reason, the default lit just wouldn't work. So instead of assigning it in the inspector, I just take the default current Unity one and instantiate that, and that seems to work, even though it should be the same shader. So that was the problem, just telling you. But yeah, it was quite a head scratcher. Once I'd done this, I needed to tweak the light levels to ensure that you could see all the enemies and you could see the hives. So I gave them their own lights. And for ammo boxes, weapons, I didn't do this because I wanted you to go and seek them out and use your torch to find them. We needed to be able to win and lose the game. So first of all, I added a win screen, which is just the player chilling in an elevator. I added a game over screen, which is supposedly the player dead on the floor, but it kind of just looks like he's planking and it's pretty funny. And I gave it this moody red lighting and I made the elevator go super fast like it's gonna crash. It kind of works. I then added a simple tutorial for the game to explain its mechanics. Except for tether kills, because first of all, it's kind of hard to explain, and secondly, it's fun to discover that mechanic, which is pretty risky for a game jam. I actually made a mistake in the tutorial area. I forgot to add backgrounds, which means that you can't actually see the light coming from your flashlight a lot of the time because it's just the black void of Unity space behind you. It's not like it's the player's first impression or anything. And I added this extremely ugly menu. Probably the worst thing I've ever made. I added a bunch of sound effects, some were royalty free and some were mouth sounds. I also spent a good amount of time adding death animations to the enemies and the hives. It adds a level of polish rather than the enemies just disappearing when they're defeated. And I think it came out really cool. When they die, they're accompanied by an explosion sound and this artwork of their bodies separating and this pink gooey tendrils try and grab the body and pull it back together. But they're not successful and they go kaboom. It's very cool. And alien spaghetti. It's kind of gross thinking about it actually. We've only got a few hours left, so we really need to test the web build of the game. The first time doing this, I totally cocked up the UI. I forgot to set UI scaling, so the first time I did it, I was greeted with massive buttons for the extremely ugly menu. You make something ugly even bigger, and it's even worse. Fortunately, it was a quick fix. What was a huge issue was the fact that the game would crash whenever you got killed by an enemy or you ran out of time. And it didn't do this on my Windows build or my normal browser build, only when I put it on itch.io. And you couldn't recover from it. I kind of figured it was something to do with loading the next level, because those two things, running out of time and being killed by the enemy, they both try and load the main menu. The fix was just to put in a check to make sure, am I already loading a level? If I am, don't load a level. So I figured maybe if two enemies hit you or you died and then an enemy hit you again while the level was loading, then maybe it would try and load another level and cause this crash. Not sure why, but that was a fix and it worked, because that's what a fix is. After fixing this massive crash issue, I only had 1 hour and 37 minutes left until submission. So I decided to submit this stable build and call it there, and spend the rest of the time working on the page for the game. I used this time to make an icon, and I used the front-facing mask that I drew earlier for that icon, which was nice. And I added lots and lots of GIFs of the game and how to play the game. I also made a quick trailer that I could throw on YouTube of the game to show, hey, it's out now, go and take a look. The submission period was now over. I decided to go and check on my page, and all of the GIFs are gone. Fuck. People would start clicking on my game and be met with a broken page of loads of images that don't load. Not exactly a great first impression. So essentially, I tried to make GIFs with my video editor, and every time I went to add them on itch.io, it just wouldn't add. So I went to a GIF converter online, downloaded GIFs from that, and again tried to add them to my itch page. But again, it didn't add and didn't tell me anything. So I tried just copy pasting it, and that worked. Now, the mistake I made was that this GIF converter had temporary links. So all those URLs of GIFs I generated and added to my itch page, they all disappeared. It turns out what I'd done wrong is that I hadn't looked at the sizes of the GIFs. So there is a file limit on itch.io for each image you put on, and my GIFs were over this file limit. But rather than itch telling me, hey, your image is too big, it just did nothing and closed the dialog window. So I assumed it just didn't work, and I had no idea why. So yeah, note to myself, remember, check the file size and download the GIF. Early reception suggested that we had fun combat, which I spent a lot of time on, so that was good. We had clunky platforming, which I kind of expected because I spent so much time on the gunplay instead. And procrastinating and playing Splatoon Raiders, yes. But we also had a game-breaking bug. I'd encountered this bug once before in playtesting, and I wasn't sure what caused it, and I couldn't seem to duplicate it. So this game-breaking bug was essentially that the hives could sometimes move out of the map. So I mentioned earlier that bullets, enemies, players can all move the hives, and then they slowly move back to the origin point. And I think either these hives were moving fast because of the floors moving to the elevator. Now, normally these are disabled, the physics on the hives, until the floor stops. But maybe there was a way that was slipping through. Alternatively, it could be dodgy hive placements. So I mentioned earlier that some hives can randomly spawn. And what I should have done is tested the floors with all the hives spawning, rather than testing it with the random system on. So it's possible there's a couple of dodgy spawns in there that need moving. But yeah, I need to go and have a look at that. Let's now skip ahead to the voting period. There's always this daunting, gut-wrenching feeling before you get results. It's rare that you ever come out of any test or competition feeling like you've smashed it. And being solo in the game jam and poorly using my time didn't fill me with the most hope. This game jam is massive, and I'm actually writing this script before getting my results. I knew to expect ratings in the thousands because of the size of the jam and how I'd applied myself this time around. I'd be happy that I even submitted something. The closest I've ever got to winning in a game jam was second place in one that had maybe 20 people. So I wasn't really expecting anything amazing from one with 10,600 people in. I knew I could have spent more time fixing these bugs, improving the platforming and adding more content into the game. But the time was up. It's time to read the result. Artwork. Honestly, this is higher than I thought. I didn't spend a lot of time on artwork. We had one background, a character that didn't have animations. So yeah, this is pretty nice actually. I think the lighting did a lot of heavy lifting here. And also, look at that ugly title screen, and yet somehow we did okay on artwork. Enjoyment. This one I'd hoped to rank higher on. I had fun playing the game. When I was actually making the game, I would often stop and just play the game, even if it didn't need playing again, because I hadn't added anything. But it was a nice distraction. However, I do understand that the game can be quite difficult, and a lot of it is based on randomness. So I'd understand if someone played the game, lost on floor 1 or 2, and gave up and rated it like 1 star. However, I do understand that people don't play game jam games for a long time, and you might encounter the game-breaking bug. You might get bad randomness and struggle on your first floor and lose, and then go, oh, well, that sucks, 1 star. If we look through the comments, some people mentioned not having enough ammo, the enemies taking too long to kill. And yeah, these would probably drag my enjoyment down as well. And I didn't really mention explicitly that the tether can give you extra health and extra ammo if you're killing enemies with it. So it's also possible that people wouldn't find that mechanic and then they would struggle even more. Narrative. Narrative is a weird one, and I did struggle rating people's games for narrative. unless it was explicitly story-based. I guess a lot of my game is kind of narrative in the world, like, why are we descending 20 floors? What happens when we get to the 20th floor? Why are there these aliens in these hives, and why are we the only one going down there? Why don't we have a team of people eradicating these hives? Why is there a tether holding us to the lift? Why does the lift go without us if we don't get back to it in time? All of these things I could have explained, and I could have added some story behind it. Audio-wise, I can't really say much. It's not my music. I use royalty-free music. I do think I selected nice music for the game, though. Sound effects, again, royalty-free, apart from some mouse sounds. And yeah, I can't really say too much. I will say, though, that I feel like, in terms of how much content I added and how many sound effects there are, I did do a lot of work making sure that there was something happening. Like when you swap weapons, there's a sound. When the elevator moves down, it makes a sound. When the elevator doors open, it makes a sound. When an enemy dies, it makes a sound. When a hive explodes, it makes a sound. And you get the idea. So there was a lot of effort put into how many sound effects. But if those sound effects and the music sucks, then yeah. Creativity. Creativity is another one I wanted to score high in. Yes, descending 20 floors isn't a very exciting countdown, but I thought the whole destroy hives and then also get back to the elevator was kind of interesting. I did also think the tether killing was cool, but again, it's not explicit. If I'd been able to extend the tether mechanic to have healing and ammo resources come from what type of tether you choose, I think that could be interesting. I did also think about having choice floors where you could maybe get something to help you on the floors or skip 3 floors so you get to the end quicker. I thought those kind of choices could be interesting. But again, I didn't get time to do it. I guess we could also do a countdown of how long the tether is. So maybe you have a 20-meter tether and it counts down and you can't go any further. I don't know. But I think it was okay. I plan on patching the game in the future to fix up some of these issues and maybe add some new content. So stay tuned and make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.